So we have already knitted across the back. Let's get rid of this marker, and using a needle I conveniently prepared earlier and some appropriately bright scrap yarn, let's slip these front body stitches off our working needles and get them out of our way. Just going to speed this up and save you the bore of me wiggling these stitches off. So slip, slip, slip. That is a lot of stitches. But now we're ready. Get rid of this marker. And the needle too. Don't need that one anymore. So this bit is a little fiddly and a pain in the bum to explain eloquently in writing, so that is what this visual is for. Essentially, we are separating these stitches one by one, resulting in half being on scrap yarn and half on your needles ready to work. Although if you have two sets of needles, you'll have them separated between two needles and you won't need the scrap yarn. Simply alternate putting one stitch on your needles and the next on your scrap yarn, or your other set of needles. It will make your life so much easier if the first stitch with the active yarn attached is the stitch you slip onto your needles, because this is what we will be working with next. Again, as I said, this can be done a lot easier if you have two sets of the same size needles, but I appreciate not everyone has access to this, so that's why I'm showing you how to do it without. So just speeding through this little fiddly bit. There we are. All the stitches have now been split. So we just pull through these needles. Okay. And as you can see, we've created the sides of the channel. And now it's time to work the first side. So just slide that back through so that it's ready to work. We will now knit through the back loop across the row 4 times in total. This will build up one side of the channel, then we will repeat for the other side. The reason I decided to put in knit through the back loop is to tighten everything up, as it can all get rather loose. Make sure you pull quite tightly on this first row. Okay, then we're going to turn our work and do exactly the same thing again. We're just knitting through the back loop to make sure everything's nice and tight. Speed through that again. Now it's time to turn our work again. And maybe without getting tangled on our scrap yarn ball that I forgot to cut off. So knit through the back loop, knit through the back loop, quick, 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 all the way across. And now we're going to repeat this one more time, back the other way. That will give us our 4 rows in total. Okay, 4 rows. Let's get that ball out the way. As you can see, we have now built the first wall of our channel. We're going to be doing exactly the same thing on the other side now. Right, first things first, let's break that yarn. Lovely bit of out of focus camera work there. Gonna have to excuse me on this. As I'm showing you how to do this with only one circular needle, I'll now have to slip the stitches we just worked onto the scrap yarn. If you do have 2 sets of needles, you can leave these stitches on the needles and just work the other side with your other needles. Now we will slip our other channel stitches onto our working needles. Again, if you have 2 pairs, these will already be on your other set of needles, ready for you to start working them. Now this is painfully slow. Let's speed through this. I think we all know how to slip stitches onto needles by now, and I don't need to bore you with me doing it. Okay, they're all slipped. Let's remove that scrap yarn. Check which side you broke yarn and attach the yarn to your active stitches on the same side. Just thread a needle to help you reattach it. Now, as before, we'll be simply knitting through the back loop for 4 rows to build the other side of the channel up. Again, it's important that you make sure you pull the stitches tight on the first row, just to stop anything being too loose and to hide the elastic once the channel is done. That's it, just knit through the back loop. Let's speed things up a bit. Yep, that is far too long. I didn't think we should just skip all the way through those 4 rows. I think you know what you're doing with knitting through the back loop by now. Okay, so let's start on the side with the active yarn. So you might just need to pull those needles through. That's it, all the way to the other side. We will now pick up 1 stitch from our needle, the next from our scrap yarn. This can be a little bit fiddly, so it might take a little bit of playing around, but you'll get the hang of it after a few goes. So another one from our needle, then another one from our scrap yarn again. Just keep repeating like that all the way across the row. Just picking up the scrap yarn, and again from the needle. Let's slide our elastic through the channel we have just started creating. We will then trap it as we go along. This will be almost impossible to slide through after, so it's important that we do this now. So just continue to alternate, trapping the elastic all the way across. So from the scrap yarn, and again from the needle. From the scrap yarn, and again from the needle. I think you get the idea. So we will just speed this up. There we go. Finish up. And ta-da! You have trapped your elastic. Let's keep it long for now and come back to trim it later. It's finally time to close off the channel. We will knit through the back loop across the rest of the row. These stitches tend to stick together a little, so be sure to knit them separately instead of accidentally knitting 2 together. Continue as you have done all the way across the row until you reach the end. And there you have it, an elastic channel. Not as difficult as it sounded, I hope.